The CDC has released new data revealing widespread mental health issues among high school students. Research shows female and LGBTQ students have been hit especially hard during the pandemic. ABC News senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty and Wisdom Powell, health director at the Yukon Health Disparities Institute, has more on this. And I want to start with you. 44% of kids in this survey reported feeling persistently sad or hopeless during the past year. What do you make of that number, and what else stood out to you in this report?
Well, Diane, this was really the first of its kind. The CDC doing a nationwide survey looking at, 8,000 students in the heart of the pandemic. This was conducted last year from January to about June. They asked them over 100 questions, and they said they found, as you mentioned, the 44% feeling persistently sad and hopeless. 55% said that they reported abuse in the home, emotional abuse, and 29% said that their parents had lost a job. So, one caveat is this is the first time the CDC has done it. We don't have anything to compare it to. We know from other research that this number is, an increase in what the high school kids were reporting at that time. I don't think that's a surprise to most parents, but it tells us that kids were not doing okay before the pandemic. They are not okay now.
And Wisdom, so given this data now, what are some of the ways that you think the pandemic has uniquely impacted teens when it comes to the pandemic and their mental health?
Well, one of the things we know is that the pandemic fundamentally altered the routine ways that teens connect with others, their peers, their teachers, and caring adults. And because of that, they've lost natural opportunities to get the kind of social support and connection that can facilitate positive mental health outcomes. So the social isolation alone, stemming from the pandemic and all the physical distancing requirements, are probably at the root of this. But there's also, the fact that our youth are under extreme stress, and stress that's associated not just with the pandemic, stress associated with large-scale social events. We're having a war in the Ukraine right now that our youth are bearing witness to. We're also still reeling from racialized violence and upticks in abuse against marginalized and historically excluded populations. So it's not surprising to me that our youth are feeling particularly pressed and stretched thin with respect to their emotional well-being.
And what did we learn about which demographics are the most vulnerable?
So, Diane, we learned that two groups were the most vulnerable, female students and LGBTQ students. One of the most stunning figures was that 3/4 of these LGBTQ students reported emotional abuse in the home. We also heard from the CDC that 1 in 3 students reported brushes with racism, with Asian Americans reporting a stunning figure of 64% said that they had experienced racist incidents. So this tells you a lot of what schools need to do, right? They need to support these more marginalized students. They need to reach out to them and make them feel that they're supported. And in fact, the report found that when schools did that, it created a more nurturing environment for all students.
And so, Wisdom, if you're an adult who either works with these teens or is an administrator at one of these schools, how do you go about sort of supporting them and uncovering some of these incidents?
So I think it's really important first to recognize that our teachers are under incredible pressure and strain to do all things. We count on our teachers to educate and be semi-counselors, sometimes nurses and doctors. And so I just want to make it plain that we're not going to be able to get our way out of this problem simply on the backs of our teachers and their labor. But teachers do play a critical role as a front line of defense. They're usually the folks that our kids spend the most time with in any given day. So the one thing we can do is be on the lookout for symptoms and signs of isolation and distress, and we can create a climate virtually in our classrooms, and now that we're moving more back into the classroom, where students are honored, respected, and validated. A zero-tolerance climate for the kinds of bullying and assaults that many of the LGBTQ students and students from historically excluded populations report. So we have a job to do, right? We have to create the culture and a climate where students can be respected, but we also have to educate ourselves about what depression looks like when it shows up in these settings, what anxiety looks like when it shows up in these settings, so that we can respond and speak to those wounds.
Now, Anne, the report also found that teens with strong connections at school were much less likely to feel hopeless or have suicidal thoughts. So what are schools doing to try to combat this?
Well, the report had very specific ideas that some schools are already working on individually. Of course, most schools are state funded. They're not federally funded. So they're talking about social emotional learning programs, teacher training, reviewing disciplinary programs or disciplinary actions. The issue, though, is that this requires money.
All right. Anne Flaherty, Wisdom Powell, great to have you both. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.